to media blackout to a certain person. What's going on with this guy? I mean, he's dealing with something similar to Bernie Sanders.
There we go.
What's going on with good old Andrew Yang? What's going on with Andrew Yang?
That's a great image of him. Okay, let's just watch him for a second. Look at him, crowd surf. Okay, let's talk about this. So Yang has talked about how he is refusing to go on NBC anymore because they're garbage, a stance that we at Hardlands Media, even though NBC is our competitor, we fully agree with. I think...
because they're our competitor.
Yeah, there you go. And it's because they're a competitor and not for any of the terrible reasons of this horrible propaganda.
I know
network.
one news show that would happily have Andrew Yang on. Come on the show.
Yeah, he's coming. Hey, here's something. Yang is coming to Chicago on December 5th?
December 5th,
we've been trying for a few months to talk to him, get him on. He's going to be here. His staff, we wish they were a little more responsive. If you could tweet Andrew Yang's campaign on Twitter, let him know, hey, why you're MSNBC screwing you, why not go on, Hardlands Media and
Chicago's #1 fastest growing independent media network, Andrew Yang.
Yeah, so if you can do that for us, we would respect it. Thank you. And we would get him on. We'd ask him good questions, not dumb questions, which would be a nice change of pace. Anyway, this is a list that actually someone sent to us on Discord a couple days ago that I thought was crazy. It's a cataloged list of all the times that MSNBC has snubbed Andrew Yang in one way or another. And I thought for a while, how do I talk about this? How do I bring this up? There's so many. So what I'm going to do is just read them because there's so many and they do a good enough job giving context. So let's start. May 18th, and these are all 2019. Andrew Yang excluded from list of all announced Democratic candidates on the 19th, excluded again from a list of all candidates. April 17th, excluded from a list of all candidates. On the 25th, excluded again from a list that Joe Biden was added to. April 28th, during an interview with Andrew Yang, his face... there's a thing of faces of all the candidates behind him. His face is not included, even though he's being interviewed. There's over 20 candidates. Andrew Yang is excluded again, despite outpolling 7 of the people that they did have listed. On June 9th, Andrew Yang is excluded from a list of all candidates running, despite outpolling half of them. June 22nd, listing all 20 candidates who will be in the first debate over 2 nights. Andrew Yang is excluded to make room for candidates who didn't even qualify the debate. And this is when this person started making this Twitter thread. On Morning Joe, and this is on June 25th, every candidate's name in the top 8 is read aloud, except for Andrew Yang. June 26th, in their coverage of a Move On poll, MSNBC excludes Andrew Yang, despite obviously being in their improvement. Despite their they excluded him from there. 27th, despite half the people on stage. Outpolling half the people on stage, Andrew Yang is asked the fewest questions. On the 28th of June, one more amusing example. NBC's graphics is turned off right when Andrew Yang's name is mentioned. On the 29th, another odd-looking example. Andrew Yang is excluded despite it looking weird to do so with 4 names. Oh, they just pulled him out of a 4x4 setup. They pulled one out, so it's a 4x3, which again doesn't make any sense. Agreed. June 30th, he's excluded from a graphic, and it looks weird that it's actually oh, we had a graphic that's correct, and we just pulled him out, so it looks weird. On July 4th, he is either entirely missing or located at the bottom left corner behind the chyron. Anyway, July 11th, and this again, all the things that chronicling at what NBC has done. So this is a long list, and it's crazy that
it keeps going on, even going into 2019.
So I'm just going to go as far as basically we have time until you guys say I want to say something. So wait, I want to go a little bit further though. Yeah. July 11th. I'll just skip. Let me skip because I'm literally skipping
You got 4 pages there, dude.
Yeah, I'm going to just go to something more recent.
Hold on, more than that. Actually, because this was 6 pages that we had to
This would make a good YouTube supercut, right?
It would. Okay, so let me just go to the last 2, which is November 10th, and report on how cable news is disproportionately covering presidential candidates. MSN chose to exclude Andrew Yang from a graph. Also, they called him John Yang at some point earlier. Just want to throw that in there. Is excluded from a graphic which lists 10 candidates, including Beto O'Rourke, who had already dropped out of the race. On November 5th, 17th, One of the most egregious examples so far, MSNBC reported on the results of the Des Moines Register poll, including every candidate who polled over 0%, except Andrew Yang, who polled 3. So, I mean, again, literally, it's like, I have like, I mean, it's hard to, I'm trying to visualize how many pieces of paper this is.
You got about 7 pages.
Look at that. I'm making a mess. It's many pieces of paper. But the point is that Andrew Yang has been chronically refused to be covered by big mainstream outlets. So I think it's really good that he did that. And again, Yang gangers out there watching this, tweet him. We do want to interview him, and it's just hard to get a hold. Yeah. But guys, what do you think?
I mean, Yang's big thing is the freedom dividend, right? UBI, and that's extremely popular, right? It's not hard to see why. There are a lot of people who are going to like that, and I part of me thinks, man, they don't want to have to deal with having to talk about that policy position, right? That's an incredibly inconvenient one that's going to give this person a lot of popularity. So a lot of it was what the Bernie Sanders, the anti-Bernie Sanders strategy was early on in 2015 leading into 2016, which is just ignore. He doesn't exist. Don't report on him. Pretend he's not there. And people who aren't paying attention won't hear about him. Right, that's the overall plan. Mm-hmm. But more than just him talking about UBI, he's the only one on the stage that brings up automation and the threat to U.S. jobs and what that is going to mean going forward. Right. And how that is an area that we do kind of lag behind. We often think of ourselves as sort of number one in the world, but he does bring up the fact that, China's doing a lot in the technology sector and a lot in the autonomy sector that we are going to have to reckon with.
Right, and there's a couple other things too that Andrew Yang's talking about, and like you mentioned automation, but he also addresses like artificial intelligence as well, and its role that will play not only in our social lives but economically as well. Artificial intelligence, automation will play a key role in human society as we progress forward. So we need to talk about this. We just can't rely on the old school mentality of we'll bring back manufacturing and coal mining jobs here to the United States. I mean, those days are long over. We just can't rewind back the clocks to the 1950s. It's never going to happen. As much as people want it to happen, it just won't happen. And we have to prepare ourselves for a new type of future, a new type of economy. And Andrew Yang is one of the few candidates that's really calling out the real threat of automation, the real threat of artificial intelligence, and what it will do to a lot of working class jobs, because there's a real scenario where a lot of people will be left without jobs, and the old school jobs that we're so used to will no longer be there. I mean, let's look at retail, for example. You've got self-checkouts. You've got in one of the Whole Food stores that's owned by Amazon, people walk in there, buy their stuff, and get out because they have their membership there. There's nobody there manning the store save just to stock the stuff, but there's no cashiers, no nothing.
Yeah, so I think I just counted. There's about 38 points, and there are varying lengths and detail. So let me just talk to the NBC, who's clearly watching us right now with their huge investigative journalist team of 0 people. If you make a mistake, you can also correct it. I remember back in our radio days, I incorrectly reported that Andrew Yang's freedom dividend had only covered people up to 65 because it was at some point, but then he changed it early on. And so a lot of people were like, hey, Daniel, that's not right. He covers people including 65 and up. And I was like, okay. And then we came back on the show and we're like, we saw this. It was wrong. And we corrected it. So NBC, it's that simple. Also,
you're asking them to do their job, Daniel. That's the one crazy thing. You asked MSNBC to do its job and to apologize. Remember, this is the same media outlet that's also doing a media blackout on progressives and independent candidates running for the congressional race. This is the same media network that's doing a media blackout to Bernie Sanders. This is the same media network that continues to smear Tulsi Gabbard. They will never apologize. Even if they do, it's only a half measure. Or either that they're just trying to cover their own asses. They will never, ever really apologize for the years of misinformation and smearing of progressive and independent candidates that are trying to bring in much needed reform and talk about issues that will clearly impact a lot of Americans.
The corporate press in this country is an absolute disgrace and is not doing their job and is not fulfilling the role of the fourth estate.